But I'm just out here in the shop, just messing around. Just got back, um, so I had a little incident. Yeah, broke my good swim bait rod. So um, either way, I'm not signed by Duckett anymore, so I really ain't got a whole lot of reason to, you know, use it. But I think I'm gonna turn it into a creek rod or something like that. Something carry down the creek, mess around with, let the kids play with. Something I don't know. But either way, went and got a what is this? 13 fishing black fate rod. Give that a shot. Let's see how that goes. So now, if any of y'all are new throwing swim baits or anything like that, I typically prefer like a 7 foot three. So a lot of people will throw like a 7 foot eight or something like that on those big heavy swim baits, and that's good. But like if you're throwing like a 3/8 ounce or a quarter ounce, even up to a half ounce, 7 foot three for me is perfect because I'm skipping that thing up under docks and stuff all the time. But yeah, if y'all didn't see it, I broke my good Duckett. What's your shallow crankbait set? Line rod, etc. All right, so shallow crankbaits. So depending on what you consider shallow, for me, shallow is anything 15 foot and under, in my opinion. But now I fish a lot of Highland Reservoir, so like Smith Lake and stuff like that. Um, me, now run whatever rod you like to run. This is just one that I had when I signed with Duckett, but I run a 7 foot medium. This is graphite and glass. The line that I prefer to use, if I'm fishing somewhere with a lot of rock, a lot of grass, or anything like that, I'm typically going to run 15 pound fluorocarbon. Um, if you want that bait to come up a little bit in the water column, you can run monofilament. Just because monofilament floats, it's got a little bit more buoyancy to it and stuff. Fluorocarbon sinks, so just keep that in mind. But my gear ratio is the biggest key as far as like cranking. So I prefer to run a 6/8 to 1. And the reason for that is I've still got good speed, okay? So I'm not dropping it down to like a 6/4 to 1 where it's super slow in case the fish hits it from the back and brings it to the boat. But 6/8 to 1, you're still going to have a good bit of torque. Um, and you're still going to be able to catch up to that fish if it comes up. But a 7 foot medium action rod, I prefer glass in my rods just so it has that flexibility. Because a lot of times when you're setting the hook on a fish, with a graphite rod, especially running treble hooks, you're going to rip it straight out of its mouth. So I've learned just my experience and a lot of the other guys, glass is hard to beat. If you can get a glass graphite, that's good because it's still got the, good sturdy backbone, but it's still got the, real flimsy tip if you need it. So, but that's my shallow cranking setup. 15 pound fluorocarbon typically does whatever I need it to do. It still gets that bait down there plenty far enough, whether I'm running 9 all the way to 25 foot. It doesn't really matter. But that's typically the crankbait setup that I run the entire time. So put that up. I'm gonna be rigging all my baits today, so y'all get to see all the baits and stuff that I typically run. So now I'm rigging up my swim bait now. So my swim bait setup, I like 7'3" medium heavy. And the reason I say 7'3" medium heavy, it's not super long, and I can still get those super long casts if I'm fishing points or, bluffs or whatever. But I can also skip my swim bait up under docks and stuff, or wherever you want to skip it, lay downs, it doesn't really matter. But I can still do all that with a 7'3" medium heavy. I've never had a bit of trouble out of, running a 7'3" with a swim bait, especially something smaller like that. But that Duckett, man, I got hung up on a rock. We were fishing, me and a buddy of mine. We were fishing, like we had this boat in like 1.5 feet of water, and it was this huge chunk rock, big run in the back, clean water coming in where we were fishing at. The water was kind of clean, and then it come out and it was real muddy, it was real sandy, and I tossed that swim bait up there in that run in like I typically do, and I just didn't even pay attention to the rock that was on the other side. And I mean, I smacked it, and then I went to pulling on it. I was trying to break my line because I knew I couldn't get the boat over there because it was so shallow and rocky and stuff. I just didn't trust it, and I snapped that sucker in half. I've had that rod since 2020, I think, is when I signed with Ducky. But either way, I'm gonna try out this 13 fishing rod and see how I like it. I was kind of wanting to go with the Meta series, but there's a place up here not too far where I live. It's about an hour and 30 minutes, and they have discount fishing tackle and stuff. So I got this thing for $50. See what's going on. But typically the swim baits that I like to run, especially this time of year, like I've always told y'all, is the Rage swimmers. The ribs on the Rage swimmers are actually pointed forward. So if you take a Rage swimmer and look at it up close compared to a Zoom or a Kitech or anything like that, with the ribs being pointed forward on the Rage swimmer, you can actually slow that bait down. So you can actually, this time of year, especially with the temperature drops and stuff, it helps big time, big time, as far as catching fish. So now when it gets closer into, deeper in spring, when that water temperature's up around the 70s, and then it keeps climbing from there on into summer, I swap to like a Zoom or Kitech or, whatever I got on hand. But we've been getting a lot of rain in this area here lately, so just about everywhere, including Smith, is going to be pretty muddy. So I'm going to be running, I'm actually going to be running like boulder baits, so whites and matte grays and stuff like that. So let's see here. I typically run 1/4 ounce Squadron Head made by Strike King. This is what I typically run throughout the year. Summer, spring, fall, doesn't matter. I just like the way it looks with the bait on there. Well, let's saw her. This thing tied on. See if I can pull up the feed here. Okay. Go. Hear my youngin' running through the house. Alrighty. This thing on. But on my swim baits, this reel right here, I've got a 7.5 to 1. It's got a little bit more give to it than running a lower gear ratio and stuff, and sometimes that helps, especially when they don't bite a swim bait really good. Because sometimes when you're running a swim bait, you feel that tap like a spinnerbait bite or a worm bite, and either way, with that little bit of give, it helps a lot of times with setting the hook. I've learned. So, about 15-pound test. That's what I run on my swim baits. Oh, let's see here. Let's go. See my cranky rod here. So, on my deep crank, I run a little bit different setup on my deep cranking rod than I do on my, my typical cranking rod. I was talking earlier about my regular cranking rod where I'm running 15-pound tests most of the time. With my deep cranking rod, 90% of the time I'm running 12-pound tests. And the reason for that is it lets that bait get down a little bit further, and then I just use the tip of my rod to control whether I'm trying to tick the top of grass or if I'm trying to, whatever. Get down a little further, I'll put the rod in the water, whatever I need to do. But I'm running 12-pound test on that. I typically run a 6:4 to 1 gear ratio. with my crank or my deep crankbaits. That way I've got a lot of torque and I don't just burn the gears out of my setup here. So, but with the water being like it is and all the mud and stuff, I'm probably gonna stick to this one right here for my deep crank setup. This is a Rapala, say DT14, I think. Should be DT15, DT14, yeah. There we go, 14 footer. So, or actually, I might just go ahead and I'm actually gonna swap this out. Let's see here. I've got to move some stuff. I went to that store, got some money bags today. Put my worms and stuff in. I've always run Ziploc bags because I never felt like spending a bunch of money on a bunch of plastic bags. So I ended up finding them. They had them, I think, 5 for $20. Cheap. I'm a cheap guy. Cheapskate. Oh, the carpet's tight. Alright, so we've been running a DT14 a lot. The water temperature is really starting to heat up. So, more than likely, we're going to go to the Strat King. I'll know it when I say it. Yeah. So I'm gonna go to the Strat King 3XD for the time being. My big cranking rod. Just because it's got a little bit of a different sound in it. I'm sure all the fish, especially where I fish, they're used to seeing the Rapalas right now. So every now and again I like to swap it up. So I'll run it a little bit and start getting bit on it. I'll keep using it. If I don't, I'll probably swap back to the Rapala just to see. I hadn't run no Strat King series crankbaits in a minute. Used to be my go-to when I was in high school. I absolutely loved them. Caught more fish off Strat King crankbaits. It's really how I got into becoming a power fisherman, because growing up, my dad always run Texas rig worms, so I got pretty bored running slow moving baits. Let's see here. Get the sucker to bite down. There we go. That thing of try, that bright red. We got the rattles in it. That all will be good. Find out, that's for sure. About time to get new rod socks. These rod socks I've had for so dang long, they falling apart. So here. Alright. So this is going to be my other cranking. Spray line. I'll tell you what, guys. Now I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but you know, Real Magic or whatever you call it, any kind of silicone spray for your line, it definitely helps, because it has saved me so much money online. Because back when I was fishing full time, I'd spent bukus of money on fishing line buying the 1,000-yard spools, and I've had some of this line on these poles for a little over a year now. It'll save you some money, or it has me. But now I run Seaguar, so that's what I've always run. I hadn't tried a whole bunch of different brands. I'm sure there's some other good ones out there, but either case, I've always run Seaguar, and I've had good luck out of it. So now what I've been running here is the Spro Rock Crawler. I know y'all heard me talk about that a bunch. It's really, really good, versatile bait this time of year. You're running rocks, wood, whatever. Just make sure you got pocket knockers on you, because you're going to get it hung up. If you ain't getting a crankbait hung up, then you ain't fishing it right. That's what an old man told me a long time ago. When I started getting my crankbait hung up a lot, it's for catching more fish. It's funny how it works. Alright, so the rock crawler. About time for a 21-foot boat too. So much stuff. Alright, let's see here. Alright, so my other cranking setup that I'm going to run for shallow water is going to be, I'm going to be running a square bill crankbait. The square bill that I really, really like to run this time of year, especially when that water gets muddy. I'm going to have one rod rigged as a crawfish pattern, and I'm going to have the other rod rigged as a shad pattern, just so I have both bases covered. I'm actually going to be running, this is the Lucky Strike. Rick Clunn edition is called the Rattler. I don't even know if you can still buy it anymore. But I have beat some large heads with this bait. Works really good in windy, muddy water conditions. It's got a good cadence to it. I've just had a lot of good luck off this crankbait. A lot of good luck. I like it a lot. But I kind of stick to my bold colors. It's cloudy, muddy. Some other colors, more glossy baits and stuff like that whenever we got clear water, sunshiny days, stuff like that. So, and one thing that somebody asked me one time, this kid, he was talking about how far he needed to cut the tag end of his line off. And anyways, he would take and trim that tag end, I mean, just as close as he could to his knot. And I told him, I said, you know, when you do that, I said, if you do have any kind of looseness in your knot, and you go to set the hook, it's basically going to slip your knot, and you're going to miss the fish because, you know, you didn't have the knot singed down. Which, don't get me wrong, you don't need to just singe the knot down like it's, you know, your most valuables on. But either case, you don't have to cut your tag end all the way up to your knot, guys. You can leave it just a little bit off. That way, if there's any slip, it's not gonna, you know, slip the knot or anything. I mean, if you're worried about the tag end, you ought to worry about the rest of the line going up your rod. You know what I mean? So be careful cutting your tag end all the way up to your knot, because I've lost a lot of fish when I used to do it like that. You can tear some stuff up doing that. So this right here is a jerk bait that I typically run from fall all the way out to summer, and it's the Megabass 110. But now I accidentally ordered the wrong one, and I wanted to try this one out a little bit, but it's kind of like the oversized 110 Junior. I like it a lot. It's just, it does attract the bigger fish, but if you're trying to really, really like hone in and locate fish quickly, it can kind of drag behind. So we're going to swap it up a little bit and see what we got here. Miss water. There we go. What we got? But jerk baits this time of year is extremely versatile. I really know a lot of people think jerk baits for them to be just straight up wintertime baits, but I have a jerk bait tied on year round pretty much. There's never really a time that I don't have a jerk bait tied on because they're just so versatile. So I need a pretty bold. Where's it at? Not really gonna go with chrome this time of year. We're gonna run. I know it's in here somewhere. So this is a Excalibur, so blueback herring jerk bait. This thing dives about 8 foot. I can't remember where you get them. I picked it up somewhere. I like the action of them. They're fairly cheap. I mean, they're a lot cheaper than a $25, $30 jerk bait. I like them a whole lot. But it's very bold. So they should be able to see it pretty well in muddier water. But I'm typically not going to be throwing a jerk bait in muddy water per se, unless I'm necessarily just dead sticking it. But either case, just in case I get in a little bit of clean water and find some suspended fish or some very active fish, I can target them with this jerk bait right here. So, but I want that bold color just because I know the water's going to be muddy. We got, I don't know how many inches of rain yesterday, but creeks are flooded, lakes are flooded, everything else. Probably a lot of sediment in the lakes, rivers, stuff like that. So I'm typically not going to be throwing a jerk bait, but I've learned you can't ever tell. So it may just be one of those one-off situations where I wish I had a jerk bait tied on. So I'm going to tie one on. All right. Oh, let's see. That Real Magic will save your tail online. That's mine anyway. Alright, let's see here. Next bait we're going to work on. Let's work on jigs. So, a lot of questions that I get from y'all is on jigs. The first tournament that I ever won, just one of the little fruit jar tournaments. They were like 20 or 25 bucks to enter. It's like a $300 jackpot. But one of the first ones I ever won, I was fishing with a jig. And the jig I had no idea what the name of it was, but I'd either found it somewhere or somebody ordered it for me or gave it to me or something. Not 100% sure where I got the jig from. But either case, I win this tournament off of a football head jig. And that football head jig that I was running, come to find out, was called a Chi Money jig. And ever since then, that's about the only jig that I use, except I will run the War Eagle Heavy Finesse jig from time to time. These situations where the water's super muddy and stuff, I typically run the black and blue. It's the only color I buy of of the heavy finesse jigs, but black and blue heavy finesse War Eagle jig. And either way, most of the questions that I get about jigs is how to fish jigs, and there is multiple ways. And the typical way most people fish a jig, they'll cast it out there, let it hit bottom, and then they just drag it across the bottom, which is completely fine. I've fished a jig like that for years, and there is situations when I do that. But just always remember, the warmer the water temperature, the faster things are going to move, such as, you know, shad and crawfish and anything that's you know, that's in the water. They're going to move faster, be more aggressive. So when it's warmer and stuff, when I say warmer, once that water temperature hits about 65 degrees and up, I'm typically with a jig, I'm not necessarily jerking it, but I'm kind of going to do like this and pop that jig off the bottom, and it just kind of creates a erratic action to where it triggers a lot of bites, because a lot of people don't fish a jig like that. They typically drag it. So the warmer it gets, try popping your jig. If you're not getting bit, try dragging it. You can also do long pickups and drops, but the cooler the water temperature, typically the slower I'll fish the jig. But when the water temperature is warm, I'm typically popping that jig. And when I say popping it, I'm popping it pretty good. So had a lot of people look at me like I was crazy until I started catching fish, and they're like, okay. So give that a shot. All right, so let's see here. We're going to tie the War Eagle heavy finesse on, just because we're going to expect the water to be super muddy. And this is what your War Eagle heavy finesse jigs look like. I mean, typically the skirt's already super short, so you don't really have to worry about trimming it or nothing, unless you just want it a little bit shorter, but I typically don't. It's got a real good thick weed guard on it. It's very, very similar to G-Man's balling out jigs. It's pretty similar to that. The only thing I like about the balling out jigs a lot better is, let's see if I got one I can just show you. I should have one somewhere. I think that's it. Uh-oh. Dog chasing chicken, boy. No, I don't have one. I thought I did. But either way, it's got a 90-degree line tie, just like the G-Money jigs. And it really goes through cover a little bit better than the, you know, your typical, like this right here, like your War Eagle jig, okay? So this is going to go, with it not having the 90-degree line tag, or line tie, it's going to have, it's going to get hung up on rocks and stuff a little bit easier, so be careful fishing it around rocks. So, but, out of the way, guys. Dogs aggravating my chickens. Let's see here. They got them all riled up. Fun part about living out in the country. Alright. Got the jig tied on. But I mean, in muddy water situations, that's about all I'm going to run, especially cold muddy water. You know, black and blues, spinner baits. I know you have heard me talk about the river rat spinner baits a lot. River rat spinner baits. I really, really prefer the river rat spinner baits. When the water gets muddy and it's cooler, I typically go with a willow and a Colorado. I don't go with double Colorado, just because I'm not fishing it super, super slow in the spring, unless we have a huge, huge cold front come through and it just absolutely stuns the fish. Then I'll fish it real, real slow, swap out to a Colorado, a double Colorado. But either way, let's see here. Go ahead and do the spinnerbait rod. Since we're talking about spinner baits, I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So here lately, I've been running a spot sticker spinnerbait. So The water up at Smith has been pretty clear. It's had a little bit of stain on it, but nothing real bad. But I've mostly been targeting the fish in the creeks. So the fish in the creeks are not necessarily chasing blueback herring. They're running threadfin shad. So the lavender spot sticker, if you got threadfin shad in your home lake, that's a really good choice. Um, they've got several different colors, blueback herring, all that. But I like the spot sticker for chasing lavender shad bass. Let's see here. Let me get this War Eagle River Rat out. Here it is. This is the one that I'm going to run when the water's super muddy. You got two different river rats. Let me just go ahead and get both of them out. So you got this one, which is solid gold chartreuse white with a red kicker. But I'm going to actually run this one instead. The only difference is the white head and it's got the red eyes. So that just gives it a little bit more contrast in the water. And I feel a lot more comfortable in super muddy water with the white head and the red eyes with the red kicker. They ought to be able to just see it a lot better. And depending on what you like to do with your spinner baits, I like using mine around docks and lay downs, anything really, grass especially. I typically run a 7-foot medium heavy, 7-1 to 1, I think. Yeah, 7-1 to 1 gear ratio on this one right here in particular, just because I'm typically going to be throwing this up against the laydowns, the docks, and stuff like that. See, you'll notice a lot of times too when we have these cold fronts push through and the water gets super muddy. A lot of these bass, especially the ones that are staging up to spawn, when that water gets super muddy, they'll get up close, super close to cover. And when they do that, you've kind of got to pinpoint your cast and slow down. So when I get in those high percentage areas, like a laydown or something where I think there is a bass, I slow down and I pick that piece of cover apart. So instead of doing like I typically do and making one cast, because I always talk about moving. If they're close to cover and it's super muddy, I'm typically going to make that cast multiple times. Just because a lot of times they just barely miss it, or they didn't hear it good, they didn't see it good. Something simple most of the time. So 3 or 4 casts in that same spot, around that spot, and then I'm cruising to the next high percentage area, whether it's with another lay down, a dock, grass, whatever. Don't really matter. But when it gets super muddy, make sure you're casting at areas that you think the bass are located multiple times, because if you don't, you could end up costing yourself a tournament, a fish, whatever you may be doing on the lake. So let's go ahead and work on this one right here. Here's one that I'm kind of excited to tie on and kind of not, because I've had good and bad luck with them. So I'm actually going to be tying a chatterbait onto this one. I don't throw a chatterbait a whole lot. I'm not a huge chatterbait person. But I typically throw a jackhammer chatterbait, and depending on the water clarity, depends on what color I throw and stuff. But this time of year, a chatterbait it's really hard to beat. Muddy water, windy situations, grass, docks, spawning areas, all that good stuff. So, and it's been so long since I tied a chatterbait on. I gotta remember where I put my trapping chatterbaits. In here? No, that's all swim jigs. Chatterbait. Bad when you got so much crap you can't remember where you put it. It's frogs. I need that. Oh, here we go. Well, in my jerkbait box. Let's see here. Alright. So this situation, like I said, we expect the water to be muddy. So we're going to be throwing a jackhammer, red, black, all that good stuff. Let's see what happens with that. I know a couple years ago I went up to Wilson. A lot of people don't. That's one thing I don't understand. Like a lot of these big tournaments and stuff, they hold it on Pickwick and Wilson, or Wheeler. I'm sorry, they hold it on Wheeler, and Wilson's always been one of my favorite areas on the Tennessee River to fish. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because it ain't got as much boat traffic as Pickwick and Wheeler, but Wilson is a lot of fun. A lot of fun to me. Anyways, almost lost my dad's boat up there one time, as a matter of fact. A buddy of mine, we had got out there, asked him to put the plug in, and didn't put the plug in. Well, he put the plug in, but he didn't tighten it up. And yeah, we almost sunk that sucker. So let's see here. And I'm typically going to team this up with either some type of swim bait, red and black, or some type of crawl. But all right, I'm at the end of the string, guys.